Good morning.
Good morning.
When Noe was leading that song this morning, that's pretty courageous. I've never heard the song. I don't know how it goes, but I'm going to lead it. I have never done that in my life. Now, I've led a lot of songs that I thought I knew and I didn't know, but I've never tried to lead a song that I don't know before, so that's courageous. It reminded me, though, that my wife and I, one time, we went over to dinner with some friends, and they didn't tell us ahead of time that their tradition is before dinner, everybody's sitting around the table, and everybody would quote a memory verse. And, you know, being a preacher and all, I figured, yeah, I got this one. And it was so funny because the night before in my dream, I had quoted the Lord's Prayer in my dream, and I did it perfectly. You guys know what's coming. So when it got to be my turn, I started quoting the Lord's Prayer perfectly, but they started correcting me. And it was like, oops, I guess I should go back and re-look at that one. But, you know, it's just like, I thought I knew this one, but anyway, we have a lot of fun, and I make a lot of mistakes. This week I made a mistake. I decided I was going to help a friend frame his house, and so I got my son and 2 grandkids together and my wife, and we drove to Montana, and we helped them frame their house for 3 days. Well, I was the negative part of that help because I ended up getting sick, and so I'd get out there every morning and dig in, and about the time I got my mess all started, then I would go to the motorhome and sleep for the next half hour, 2 hours, or 3. And but anyway, trying to talk over the equipment and everything, man, I just really messed up. So my voice still sounds very hoarse, and so please excuse my lack of voice, and hopefully by next week it'll be back, and we'll be able to get on with things. But this morning we are in the book of Revelation. As we are looking at the book of Revelation, one of the most exciting things that I have found is the letters, the 7 letters to the 7 churches of Asia. And the reason it was so exciting to me was because of the number 7. The number 7 being the perfect or complete number. Because it was the complete number, there also, it says the 7 messengers, or sometimes interpreted angels. But the 7 messengers, the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. The 7 messengers, which I am taking to be those who are delivering the message to the different churches. Some have interpreted angels, it's the exact same word. Interpret it how you like it. It makes more sense to me that it was the messengers that are delivering the message to the churches. So I took it as being the preachers, the teachers, the elders, the leaders, somebody in that church that was delivering that message. So that's the way I'm reading this. But all of those 7s was pretty amazing. But then as I was looking through them and I was trying to divide up the different messages, I realized that each of the 7 letters had 7 parts to the letter. Each one of them noting that there was a to and a from and a message and a correction and let's see, there was also in a promise and the invitation. And so as I was looking through it, it was kind of exciting to see those different parts. Some of them actually have 2 promises and no corrections. And some of them had 2 corrections and no promise. No, but some of them really needed some correction. The church today is the church of Pergamum. And it starts out, to the messenger of the church of Pergamum. When you hear the word Pergam, what comes to your mind? Purgatory. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Purgatory. That's not very far off. You see, the church in Pergamum is the church that was located in the middle of a city that was not only full of idols, as we read in Ephesus and also in Smyrna, where there was many idol worshiping, but they had something different, something new that they brought into the mix. They were the first church, or not church, the first city to begin worshiping emperors. So the emperor of Rome became their god. And not only did they build a temple, they built 3 temples to the emperor god. Now, that may or may not have any significance to you, but as we go, you'll see why I believe that to be a very important part of this. But as we begin this, I'd like to read to you. It says, "To the messenger of the church of Pergamum write, these are the words of him who has the sharp, double-edged sword." As we've discussed in chapter 1, he has a whole list of descriptions of Jesus. All of the different descriptions that you would think of, and then some. But one of the descriptions was the description of the sword. And what do you think of when you think of a sword? A sword has 2 purposes. One is to kill. The other is to cut something open. That's what this one is all about. You see, I feel like sometimes when we read the book of Revelation, we get this picture in our mind of this Jesus who is out to strike, to kill, to destroy. That is not Jesus. It's not who he was, it's not who he is, and it's not ever what he will be. Jesus is a God of love and mercy. His desire is that all men would come to him. But the sword can cut open and reveal what's inside. Why would you want to reveal what was inside? So that you can change something. So that something can be corrected. Just like a surgeon's knife. A surgeon cuts open a patient and they look inside so that they can see what needs to be corrected. They can correct it and then they sew them back up. I was building a deck one time. It was right after our youngest son was born, and Rhonda was away with the 3 kids, and I was building this deck as fast as I could and thinking I'd make a lot of good progress while everybody's gone. And there was a cement block in the middle of the yard with a metal saddle sticking up out of it. I was wearing my shorts and working fast, and I walked across it and set my board down and thought, wow, I did something to my knee when I crossed that block. And I looked down and there's this trickle of blood. And then I looked again and that thing was laid wide open. It just looked like a fish that had been filleted. All the way to the bone, 5-inch. Took 75 stitches to put that thing back together. But that filleted open, that wide open, you could see everything. Sitting there in the doctor's office, and the doctor took off the duct tape that I had Ron put around it. And got to it, and he's got it laid open, and he said, okay, move your toes. And I moved my toes, and I could see the tendons moving in there. It was so cool. And he said, move your foot up and down. And I could see the muscles go like this. Now, that is so awesome. Could my sons come in and see it? And he said, hey, order pizza, we'll have picnic. And, so anyway, it was one of these things that once in a lifetime experience, I guess. But I was sitting there looking at that and thinking, wow, you can see all of the things, all of the details in there. It wasn't a surgeon's knife that had cut me open, but it was one that cut and cleaned it up. And I'll tell you what, that cut open was a lot easier than the cleaning up went. But anyway, beside the point, this double-edged sword that Jesus describes coming out of his mouth, not for the purpose of killing, it's for the purpose of cutting open so you can see what's inside, so that you can be able to understand and know what needs to be changed, what needs to be fixed. Now listen to this. These are the words of him who has the sharp, double-edged sword. I know where you live. I don't know why this catches me out. Every time I read this, it makes me laugh. Because I know where you live. you hear that, don't you? I mean, whenever somebody says to you, I know where you live, what does that mean? That you better not double cross me. You better not, because I know where you live, you know. Jesus here is saying, trust me, I know where you live. I know what you're going through. He goes on, I know where you live, where Satan has his throne. Yet you remain true to my name. You did not renounce your faith in me, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was put to death in your city where Satan lives. So martyrdom was not something too unfamiliar. In these days, martyrdom happened. People were crucified. People were thrown into the lions in the Colosseums. Things happened where they would be put in prison, separated from their families. All kinds of things happened in the name of persecuting Christians. This particular mention, there's something different about it. They don't know exactly what happened to him. Excuse me. But the tradition says that he was put inside an iron bull and put over the fire to burn. I don't know if that was because of historians writing that or what, but that was what the history seemed to have claimed. But in any circumstances, there was something so bad that Jesus said, even during that persecution, you did not turn your back on me. I'm going to have to water my throat down a few times here. But he says, even during that, you did not turn your back on me. You remained faithful even during that time. Just imagine for a moment, if you had family, friends, witnessed somebody who you knew who was killed in a horrendous way, would it shake your faith? Would it cause you to wonder, do I really believe what I think I believe? Maybe I could change things. Maybe I could get along a little differently with people. But when we truly know who we serve, and we truly know that Jesus is who he says he is, and our faith is not based on a whim, but on an experience, a lifelong experience of trusting in him, then when those hard times come, when those tribulations fall, and we are faced with difficulty, we say, I know who I serve. Even to death, I will remain faithful to him. And so that is the church here in Pergamum. The city itself, an evil city. A city that was worshiping the emperors, and so much so that they had to build 3 temples to the emperor's name. That may be because they had so many followers, or more likely it was because they wanted to impress the emperor. They built a temple. They were the first ones. They built this temple to the emperor. And in the process, some of the other churches like Ephesus and Smyrna began to build a temple to the emperor too, to impress the emperor. So they built 3 of them, so that nobody's going to outbuild us. We're going to keep building until we are the most worshipers of the emperor. So the idea of putting the emperor up on a throne, he refers to it as where Satan lives. And in this word, the lives, there is this denoting where the throne is, where his throne is. And so Satan's throne in this city, or this place, denotes an evil city, an evil presence. You ever walked into a place and you just felt that evil? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a dark feeling. That's the feeling that you would get in this city. And so God, Jesus, is saying, I commend you because you have stood fast and you still stand fast, even in the circumstances of all of this. Now, the name Pergamum has something else too. There was something that was used in the day called papyrus that was common for writing utensils, writing parchments. But the word parchment actually came from Pergamum. And the reason being is because they developed a new way of recording things. It is said that their library held over 200,000 scrolls. And they were the one that developed this writing material. And because of that, they recorded all kinds of things. And I don't mean good things either. They have a lot of witchcraft, a lot of worshiping other gods, and these things were all recorded in these scrolls in this library. Can you imagine 200,000 scrolls? This city was wound and bound in evil. And then Jesus, in verse 14, nevertheless, this is where the cutting of the sword comes. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. You have people who hold on to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin by eating food sacrificed to idols and by committing sexual immorality. Likewise, you also have those who hold on to the teaching of Nicolaitans. Repent, therefore, otherwise I will soon come to you and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. So, here's the situation. If you go to Numbers chapter 31, there is a verse in 16 where he tells us this. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and were the means of turning the Israelites away from the Lord in what happened at Peor, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. Now, and he goes on, but the point is here that he says, this is the story. You've heard about the story. You know the story. This is the same people. The people were the Moabites. If you don't remember where the Moabites came from, Lot. Abraham and Lot. Lot was living in Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was about to be destroyed, and Abraham begged for Lot and his family's life. And so the angels went and took Lot, his wife, his 2 daughters, tried to get his son-in-laws to go with him, but couldn't. Ended up just the 4 of them, leading him out of the city. But Lot's wife longed to be back there, so much so that she went against the angels' instructions. She looked back. Not just a glance over her shoulder. I don't believe it was just a glance. She looked back longingly, wanting to go back. Maybe even turned around thinking, I'll go back. And she's turned to a pillar of salt. Remember the story? Well, Lot, his 2 daughters, go to a cave by themselves. Not where God had sent them. God had told them to go to a city nearby, but he said, I don't want to go there. I want to go to this cave. Well, his daughters come up with a scheme. We're all alone. There are no other men, so they get their father drunk. They end up both getting pregnant. The first son is Moab, where the Moabites come from. The second son is the Ammonites. So out of the 2 children of Lot come the 2 nations, the Moabites and the Ammonites. Those are the nations that the nations of Israel fights again most of their lives. Why? God tells them, do not take the wives of the Moabites and the Ammonites. Do not take them because they will corrupt you. What happens? Exactly what he said. they took the wives of the Ammonites and the Moabites, and because they did, they brought in all of these evil things, including worshiping these other gods. And God says, how did that happen? Well, there's this man named Balaam. Balaam was kind of a prophet. He was a seer. And so he would give people ideas of things to do. Well, this guy named Balak of the Moabite nation, the king of the Moabites, goes to Balaam and says, curse these people that are moving into this land. Because Moses had led them out of out of Egypt. And the Israelites come to the desert. And Moses is out there with all of these people. And the Moabite king says, oh, we got to get rid of these. So call Balaam. Balaam comes. Balak says, curse these people. But God prevented Balaam from cursing him. And so he blessed him instead. Multiple times this happens. Finally, Balaam says, Balak, I cannot bless these people because God has forbidden it. But let me tell you a secret. If you entice them with women, if you bring them into the sins of your nation, they will be drawn in. And because they are drawn in, they will be separated from God and they will be destroyed. Guess what Balak did? He married his wives off to the Israelites, and the Israelites became like the Moabites, worshiping other gods. And because of that, they were destroyed. A large part of them were destroyed. There was always a remnant. But the large part was destroyed because their evil desires overtook them. Here, now back in Pergamum, he says, you're falling for the same mistake. You're doing the same thing. You have stood firm against the persecutions. You have stood up and said, I would rather die than go against my Lord and Savior. That's wonderful. But you have accepted the way of the Nicolaitans, a wicked nation that has allowed this foreign worshiping of gods to come in and worshiping the emperor to come in. And he says, you're letting that creep into the church. Don't let it come into the church. Don't accept that. Stand firm. He tells them that if you let that come in, the sword of my mouth will be against you, will fight against you. My interpretation of that is that Jesus will be the one that will reveal what's in the heart. He will be fighting the evil that is coming into the church. He says, first of all, think about it. Realize what you're doing and change your ways. If you don't, I will reveal it. I will show the wickedness that is there. He says in verse 17, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna. I will also give him a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to him who receives it. There is a promise. You see, God gave Moses a promise. Lead my people. If you bring my people out, I will take care of you. So he leads his people out into the wilderness. And there's no water, and there's no food. And God provides manna. He provides the rock to provide water for them. And the people would go out in the morning, and like dew on the grass, they would collect the manna. Manna was nothing like anything else that they had before or after. But the manna represented something. It wasn't the food. I mean, he could have provided the food in different ways. He ends up providing quail. He ends up providing other things for them. But it was the concept and the idea that God knows what you need and will provide everything you need. Trust Him. Put your trust in Him. To verify that, He says, collect all you want every day, but whatever you don't eat, throw it out, because it's not going to be any good tomorrow. Eat all you want, but it's not going to be any good. On the seventh day, on the sixth day, collect enough for both days, and it'll still be good on the seventh day. Well, if it's going to be good on the seventh day. On the fourth day, I had extra, I'm going to keep it. Next morning, terrible. I mean, maggots, awful stuff. On the sixth day they kept it, and it was fine. On the seventh day, God provided. He was taking care of their needs, everything they needed. He provided it for them. He's saying, trust me, I've got it. I can handle it. I will take care of you. But don't make the mistake of thinking you can save it up, because it's there for a purpose. That purpose is to know that I am here and I will provide for you. Trust me. Put your faith in me. How does that relate to here? They had a tough choice to make right here. They had to make a choice because they lived in an evil place. And there was evil all around them. When you're a small church, when you're a small people, it's easy to say, it's okay. We'll just let evil exist. Because we're small and we don't want to push anybody away. So we'll accept the evil to creep into the church. Because if we kick out everybody that's evil, we won't have many left, right? Does that make sense? I mean, when you think about it, wouldn't it be easy just to say, yeah, I know Kurt's sleeping around with everybody, but, hey, what's the big deal, It's okay, because if we get rid of him, who else? Who else wants to come to a small town of Grandview? So we'll just put up with it, right? Allow it. Now, what I'm trying to say is, it's not that we're perfect. Not that any of us are perfect. Not that anybody does everything right all the time. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if we choose to live a life of the world, we are no longer separated from God. We have no longer set ourselves apart. I'm not saying that you have to be perfect. What I'm saying is we need to be able to stand firm on what the Bible teaches, what God instructs us to do. He gave them some very specific instructions here, and that is, do not go along with the ways of the Nicolaitans. What did he say that was? He says, by eating the foods and sacrificed to idols and by committing sexual immorality. Likewise, you also have those who hold to the teachings of the Nicolaitans. Repent, therefore, otherwise I will soon come to you and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. Not against you, against them. Separating those who are still walking in the light from those who have chosen to follow the way of the Nicolaitans. But he's given them a chance here. He's telling them, take a stand. What do you think he's wanting them to do? Do you think he's wanting to go and find those people and say, get out of here, leave? I think the reason he's pointing it out is because he wants them to go to them in love and say, can you please leave the ways of this world and come back to Christ? Because he is coming. And when he does, he is going to judge you. He is going to reveal what you're doing. The things that you do in secret are going to be revealed in the light. And he is the one that's going to be doing the revealing. And He wants these people in this church to go to their fellow Christians and say, repent, come back. I want you to be part of the fellowship, but we can't let this go on. You're going to lead other people astray. You're going to cause others to lose their faith. So please, come back to the Lord. That's the reason he's warning you. The promise that comes, I will also give him a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to him who receives it. Jesus has a promise for us. If we continue to follow him, if we do what he's asked us to do, he's given us white. Pure is what white represents. He's given us purity, and he wants to write our name on it. Those who are presently worshiping the Nicolaitans, those who are presently worshiping the Emperor of Rome, come back. Come back and be faithful to Christ, and I'll write your name on the pure rock, pure white rock. And that represents to me that he is writing our name in heaven, that he is preparing a place for us, and that we are named in that place that he is waiting to give us. Now, for you and I today, I don't have to have a whole lot of analogy drawn because we're in the same place. This is talking to us too. I mentioned before that he wrote the letters to 7 churches in Asia for a reason. And I believe not only is it because the cities are in a circle that lead back to the beginning, a semblance of the completeness. Not only is it because of the number 7, not only is it because the 7 churches were the 7 churches that John was most involved in, but I believe it was because of the fact that he had 7 examples of different churches that cover all of the bases that we would be liable to fall under. And I can say that this church here serves the United States. One of the best examples, because what is creeping in to the churches across the United States today is this idea that we can accept a little bit of the world here, a little bit of the world here, and we can change our standards so that we're not so, what's the word? Set apart. We'll be more like the world. We'd be more accepted. If we were more like the world would be more likely to accept us, you know? God doesn't want us to be accepted by the world. God wants us to be set apart from the world so that they can come to us, not us become like them. But in the world today, in the United States today, I feel like so many of the churches are becoming like the world around them, accepting the standards of the world around them. It's okay to agree with alternative lifestyles. It's okay to say that, hey, choose for yourself what you want to be. It doesn't matter. That's the world around us. God's saying, no, I want you to stand on my word. I want you to stand for what my truths are. And he's calling us, as he's spoken to the beginning, to be faithful even in the face of death, even in the face of the persecutions, to stand firm on his word. Love all mankind. Love everyone. But in love, bring the gospel of repentance. Help them to see that the world is not telling us the truth. That there is something that God intends. And that plan is for us to